Welcome to the Japan Deep Dive Report. So when you picture Japan, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably a pretty small island nation, right? Well, get ready to have that idea completely turned on its head. What if I told you that by one absolutely critical measure, Japan is actually one of the biggest countries on the entire planet? Yeah, you heard that right. Let's dig in and see how that's even possible.
Okay, so forget about land area for a second. That's not what we're talking about. When it comes to the sheer size of its maritime territory, we're talking about the ocean it controls. Japan ranks an unbelievable 6th in the world. 6th. I mean, that's just a staggering figure, and it totally changes the game and how we think about the country's real size and influence. So how on earth does a nation of islands pull that off?
All right, just look at the difference here. It's night and day. On one side, you've got Japan's land area, and on the other, well, that's its combined territorial waters and what's called the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. Basically, that's the chunk of the ocean where a country gets special rights to all the resources. And for Japan, we're talking a whopping 4.47 million square kilometers. This huge stretch of sea is absolutely vital for everything from fishing to finding resources under the seabed. It really transforms Japan from just an island nation into a full-blown maritime superpower.
I mean, just let that sink in for a moment. The ocean that Japan controls is almost 12 times bigger than the country itself. Just try to wrap your head around that. And all of this vastness, this massive maritime territory, it all comes down to one key feature. It's incredibly long, incredibly complex coastline.
So this huge maritime territory isn't just some line on a map. It's anchored by a real physical coastline that stretches for about 34,000 kilometers. To put that in perspective, that is long enough to wrap around 85% of the entire Earth. That is an absolutely immense and complicated border where the land meets the sea.
And we're not talking about some smooth, straight line here. Not at all. It's this jagged, dynamic edge, just full of countless bays and capes. And this is where most of Japan actually lives. A crazy 39 out of its 47 prefectures are right on the coast. This shoreline, it tells a story. It's a story written by these incredibly powerful forces of nature and, of course, by centuries of human history.
So to really get a handle on the coastline we see today, we've got to jump in a time machine. We need to go way, way back and look at the epic geological events that actually created it. We're talking millions of years ago, when this part of the world looked completely different.
Okay, so picture this. About 17 million years ago, a huge prehistoric bay covered what is now, believe it or not, landlocked Saitama, just north of Tokyo. As the Japanese islands started rising up from the sea, that ancient bay vanished. But the really dramatic change, the one that truly shaped what we see today, came way more recently, right at the end of the last ice age.
So as the whole planet started to warm up, these absolutely colossal ice sheets began to melt. And all that water had to go somewhere, right? The sea level around Japan just surged upwards by almost 100 meters. We're not talking about a gentle little rise here. This was basically a global flood that completely redrew the map.
So you gotta ask yourself, what happens when a massive flood of seawater comes pouring into a landscape that's already been carved up by ancient rivers for thousands of years? Well, you get something very specific. And, as it turns out, something really beautiful. What you get is something called a Rias Coast. Now, this is a geological feature that's actually known around the world by its Japanese name, Ryasushiki Kaigan. It happens when rising seas drown old river valleys. The easiest way to picture it is to imagine those river valleys as fingers stretching into the land. The flood basically filled them up, turning them into the deep, narrow inlets you see today. This is what creates that famous, almost sawtooth coastline that's so iconic in places like Omori and Miyagi. And this is where it gets really cool, because you see this direct line from ancient geology to modern-day culture and food. The protected, calm waters inside these Rias inlets, they are absolutely perfect for aquaculture. It's no coincidence that today these areas are famous for cultivating some of Japan's most prized products. We're talking delicious oysters, nori seaweed, and of course, pearl. Okay, so we've seen how nature shaped the land. But what about the other way around? Humans have been shaping the coast right back for centuries. And there is no better place on Earth to see this incredible relationship, this sort of dance between people and the sea, than in the story of how Japan's largest city, Tokyo, was built. It's honestly hard to even picture it now standing in the middle of that concrete jungle. But the very heart of modern Tokyo, I'm talking about the bustling Marunouchi business district, right next to the Imperial Palace, that entire area was once a deep, swampy inlet of Tokyo Bay. It was called the Hibiya Inlet. So when the shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu decided to make Edo, what we now call Tokyo, his capital, he kicked off one of the most ambitious engineering projects you can imagine for that time. He literally leveled a mountain, conned a mountain, and used all that earth as landfill to fill in the Hibiya Inlet. Why? To create brand new land for the mansions of his feudal lords, these powerful samurai warriors known as the daimyo. So much of Tokyo is quite literally a city built on top of the sea.
And here's a really cool little tidbit. A piece of that ancient inlet is still there today, hiding in plain sight. It was kept as part of the castle's defenses, and you can still see it. It's the Hibiya Moat, that waterway that runs right alongside the imperial palace. It's a direct, visible connection to Tokyo's watery beginnings.
So from geology shaping the land to people building entire cities on top of it, Japan's whole history is interwoven with mastering its coastline. But that long relationship, well, it's entered a new, much more challenging chapter. Because the very beaches that line this incredible coast are now in real danger. Get this. Every single year, Japan loses about 160 hectares of its sandy beaches. To put that in perspective, that's about 400 acres of beach. Just gone, vanished. Every year. It's a huge problem. So the big question is, why is this happening?
Well, the main reasons are, unfortunately, man-made. All the construction of ports and breakwaters has changed how ocean currents work along the coast. At the same time, all the dams and concrete we've put in our rivers have basically choked off the natural supply of sand that should be flowing from the mountains down to the sea. Think of it like a conveyor belt that's been shut off. More sand is being washed away by the waves than is being delivered to replace it.
So we've gone on quite a journey, haven't we? We've seen how Japan's very identity was forged in ancient seas, and then how its people turned around and reshaped that same coast to build one of the most advanced nations on Earth. But this story, which started in a prehistoric bay millions of years ago, has now brought us to the disappearing beaches of today. And it leaves us with a really critical question. After building an entire civilization by mastering the sea, what is our responsibility now to the coastline of tomorrow?